Donald Trump's presidency was nothing short of tumultuous, marked by a series of controversial decisions and statements that often left both his supporters and critics in a state of disbelief. He campaigned on a platform of America First, a slogan that resonated deeply with many Americans who felt left behind by the rapid pace of globalization and the shifting economic landscape. This message struck a chord with American workers and citizens who believed that their interests had been sidelined in favor of international agendas. This ideology, however, extended beyond trade deals and economic policies, permeating into various aspects of his administration's approach. It seeped into his foreign policy, leading to some rather unconventional and frankly alarming proposals that challenged the status quo. Trump, it seemed, had a penchant for real estate, and not just any real estate but entire countries, as if they were properties on a monopoly board. His America First vision seemed to encompass a world where the map needed a serious redrawing, with new boundaries and territories, with America's borders expanding like an ambitious game of Risk, where strategic moves were made to gain more control. From suggesting Canada should be absorbed into the US, an idea that seemed outlandish to many, to eyeing Greenland with covetous eyes, proposing to buy it from Denmark, a notion that was met with widespread ridicule. Trump's pronouncements left the world bewildered and in some cases deeply offended, as they grappled with the implications of his statements. His approach to international relations was often transactional, viewing alliances and partnerships through the lens of business deals. He seemed to view countries as properties to be bargained for, strong-armed, or simply bought outright, much like assets in a real estate portfolio. This approach, needless to say, did not sit well with many world leaders who were unaccustomed to such a blunt and mercantile style of diplomacy, who found themselves on the receiving end of Trump's unique brand of diplomacy, often feeling more like business adversaries than political allies. The question on everyone's mind was, just how far was Trump willing to go to realize his expansionist ambitions? Would he stop at mere rhetoric, or were there concrete plans in the works? And what did this mean for the future of America's relationships with its closest allies and the world at large? The uncertainty left many nations on edge, wondering what the next move would be in this high-stakes game of geopolitical chess. Perhaps the most audacious of Trump's proposals was his suggestion that Canada should become the 51st state of the US. This bold statement was not just a fleeting comment, but a reflection of a larger, more complex geopolitical stance. This idea, floated somewhat casually during trade negotiations, was met with a mixture of amusement and disbelief by Canadians. The very thought of merging with the US seemed like a far-fetched fantasy to many, sparking conversations across the nation. The notion of Canada, a proud and independent nation with its own unique culture and identity, simply becoming another star on the American flag was preposterous to say the least. Canadians cherish their distinct way of life, from their healthcare system to their cultural heritage. It revealed a fundamental misunderstanding or perhaps a willful ignorance of Canada's history, values, and national pride. Canada's journey to becoming a sovereign nation is filled with moments of resilience and determination. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau responded to Trump's suggestion with characteristic diplomacy, stating that while Canada and the US shared a close relationship, Canada was perfectly content with its current status as a sovereign nation. Trudeau emphasized the importance of mutual respect and understanding between the two countries. However, beneath the veneer of politeness there was a sense of unease. Canadians began to question the true intentions behind such a proposal and what it meant for their future. Trump's suggestion, though seemingly absurd, highlighted a deeper concern about the US's attitude towards its northern neighbor. It brought to light the power dynamics at play and the potential implications for Canadian sovereignty. It raised questions about whether the US truly respected Canada's sovereignty, or simply saw it as an extension of its own territory. The proposal served as a reminder of the delicate balance in international relations and the importance of maintaining national identity. If the suggestion of annexing Canada was audacious, Trump's proposal to buy Greenland was simply bizarre. In 2019, reports surfaced that Trump had expressed interest in purchasing the massive island from Denmark. Trump's reasoning for wanting to buy Greenland was purportedly based on its strategic location and potential mineral resources. However, the very notion of buying a sovereign territory in the 21st century was met with widespread condemnation. Denmark, understandably, was quick to dismiss Trump's proposal. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen called the idea absurd and reiterated that Greenland was not for sale. The people of Greenland were equally bewildered by Trump's interest. They saw it as a patronizing attempt to buy their homeland as if it were a piece of real estate, completely disregarding their right to self-determination. The Greenland saga, while ultimately amounting to little more than a diplomatic gaffe, underscored the Trump administration's unconventional and often disrespectful approach to international relations. Trump's expansionist ambitions did not stop at Canada and Greenland. His vision extended far beyond the northern borders, eyeing territories that had long been under the sovereignty of other nations. He also set his sights on Panama, specifically the Panama Canal, a vital artery for global maritime trade and a symbol of engineering prowess. Trump repeatedly demanded control of the crucial waterway, arguing that the U.S. had built it and therefore should have ownership. His rhetoric was steeped in a sense of entitlement, disregarding the complex history and agreements that had shaped the canal's status. This argument, however, conveniently ignored the fact that the U.S. had returned control of the canal to Panama in 1999. The handover was a landmark event marking the end of a long-standing dispute and the beginning of a new era for Panama. The canal had been a source of contention between the two countries for decades, and the U.S.'s decision to relinquish control was seen as a major victory for Panama's sovereignty. It was a moment of national pride and a testament to Panama's resilience and determination. Trump's demands for control of the canal were met with staunch resistance from Panama. The Panamanian people and their leaders were united in their resolve to protect their hard-won sovereignty. Panamanian President Juan Carlos Varela firmly rejected Trump's claims, stating that the canal was not for sale. His stance was clear and unwavering, reflecting the sentiments of the Panamanian populace. The dispute over the Panama Canal highlighted the Trump administration's willingness to overturn long-standing agreements and disregard international law in pursuit of its interests. It was a bold move that drew criticism from many quarters. It also underscored the U.S.'s complicated and often fraught history with Latin America. The region has long been a focal point of U.S. foreign policy, marked by interventions and diplomatic tensions. The international community watched with a mixture of amusement and alarm as Trump's expansionist ambitions played out on the world stage. His proposals were widely condemned as being out of touch, disrespectful, and potentially dangerous. Many saw Trump's pronouncements as a sign of America's declining global influence and a retreat from its traditional role as a defender of democracy and international order. Others viewed it as a worrying sign of a world order increasingly defined by unilateralism and might makes right. Whatever the interpretation, one thing was clear. Trump's expansionist ambitions had damaged America's reputation on the world stage and eroded trust in its leadership. Some argued that Trump's outrageous proposals were never meant to be taken literally. They were, they claimed, simply a negotiating tactic, a way to throw his counterparts off balance and extract concessions. This art of the deal approach, however, often backfired. Instead of securing favorable deals, Trump's aggressive tactics often alienated potential partners and damaged America's long-term interests. Whether intentional or not, Trump's disruptive approach to diplomacy had a profound impact on the global order. It undermined the norms and institutions that had governed international relations for decades, leaving a vacuum that other actors, less benign than the U.S., were all too eager to fill. Trump's expansionist ambitions, though ultimately unsuccessful, left a lasting mark on America's global standing. His disregard for international norms and his willingness to bully and coerce other countries damaged America's reputation as a reliable and trustworthy partner. The world began to question America's commitment to the rules-based international order that it had championed for so long. Allies felt increasingly uncertain about America's willingness to defend their interests, while adversaries saw an opportunity to exploit America's perceived weakness. The damage to America's global standing was not irreparable, but it would take time and effort to rebuild the trust that had been eroded during the Trump years. While Trump's presidency came to an end, the legacy of his expansionist ambitions lingered. The world was left to grapple with the consequences of his actions and to ponder what the future held for America's role in the world. Would America retreat further into isolationism, or would it re-engage with the world in a more constructive and collaborative way? Would the rules-based international order that had been so shaken by Trump's actions be restored, or would it give way to a more chaotic and unpredictable world? These were the questions that would define the years to come. The world held its breath, hoping for the best but bracing for the worst.